Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I'll be analyzing the case of Benjamin Foster. His case was featured on an episode of the Netflix series Worst Ex Ever. First, I'll look at the background, including the timeline of the crimes, then offer my analysis. Benjamin Obadiah Foster was born in the mid-1980s and lived in Medford, Oregon. As an adult, he moved to Las Vegas, Nevada, and found work as a bartender. He was also active in studying mixed martial arts. In 2012, he met a woman who was referred to as Amber in the documentary episode. Amber and Benjamin were co-workers at a hotel day club. They moved in together in 2013. In November 2014, Benjamin pushed and slapped Amber. She called the police, and Benjamin was arrested. Ultimately, he had to undergo counseling and perform community service. In September 2015, Benjamin attacked Amber again, which led to her calling the police. This time, according to Amber, she was the one who was arrested. Later, the charges were dismissed. In September 2017, Benjamin contacted Amber and apologized. They resumed some type of relationship. On December 24, Christmas Eve, Benjamin discovered a text message on Amber's phone, which made him upset. Presumably, it was from someone he perceived to be a potential romantic competitor. Benjamin attempted to strangle Amber, but she escaped and notified the police. Benjamin was arrested and charged with felony battery. In September 2018, Benjamin moved into an apartment with another romantic interest. The documentary episode referred to her as Jamie. According to Jamie, one time when they were together, Benjamin slammed her to the floor for absolutely no reason. It was an unprovoked attack. They were not arguing at the time. Jamie could not make any sense of Benjamin's behavior. About a year later, Jamie filed for a restraining order against Benjamin. He was not too happy about this and attacked her in her apartment on September 16, 2019. He held her prisoner, shaved her head, and repeatedly assaulted her physically. 7 of her ribs were broken, she had 2 black eyes, and she had other injuries. On October 2, 2019, Jamie convinced Benjamin that they needed to get food and water. They went to a grocery store and a gas station. Jamie managed to escape as Benjamin was letting her dog out of the car. So Benjamin was distracted by the dog. The police were notified. Benjamin was arrested and charged with 5 felonies, including first-degree kidnapping. Unfortunately, Jamie did not want to testify against Benjamin. This put the state in a difficult position. They offered Benjamin a plea bargain to resolve the charges from both domestic violence incidents, the attack on Amber in 2017 and the attack on Jamie in 2019. On August 21, 2021, Benjamin Foster pleaded guilty to 1 felony count of battery and 1 misdemeanor count of battery involving domestic violence. He was sentenced to a maximum of 2.5 years in prison. Having already served 729 days in jail, which is just about 2 years, he was eligible to be released. Benjamin walked out of prison in October 2021 and moved to Grants Pass, Oregon, to be near his parents. He took a job as a bartender at a place called Corvette Bar and Grill. While he was there, he met a coworker named Justine Siemens. She also worked at a place called Herb's Restaurant, so she had a couple of different jobs. Justine discovered that Benjamin had a criminal adventure in Las Vegas, and she told the manager of the Corvette Bar and Grill. This resulted in Benjamin getting fired. He found another job at a place called the Canyon Creek Tavern, but he was still upset about being terminated. Benjamin made entry into Justine's house on the 2100 block of Shane Way and physically attacked her. He held her captive for about 3 days. On January 24, 2023, at 6:46 p.m., Justine called Herb's Restaurant and spoke to her boss, Beverly Parker. Justine said that she had a severe case of strep throat and needed to go to the emergency room. The phone call abruptly ended at this point. Justine wasn't on the schedule to work that night. Beverly knew that something was wrong. She tried calling back 3 times, but there was no answer. Beverly contacted her daughter, Angela Milner, and asked her to check on Justine. Angela arrived at Justine's residence quickly and could hear Justine screaming for help, followed by loud banging noises. Angela called 911 at 6:52 p.m. and spoke to the operator as she tried to get into one of the doors of the house. Discovering it was locked, she ran to the side of the house, where she saw the garage door open and Benjamin standing next to his dark blue 2008 Nissan Sentra. Benjamin told Angela that Justine was having a heart attack and suggested that they should take her to the hospital. Angela went inside the house, but realized that Benjamin did not follow her in. When she turned around, she saw Benjamin get into his Sentra and drive away. Angela supplied the 911 operator with the license plate number of Benjamin's vehicle. After making her way into the laundry room, Angela found Justine face down. She was bleeding from head injuries, and there was a rope around her neck. Justine was transported to a hospital and survived. The police started looking for Benjamin. A massive manhunt was initiated. 2 days later, on January 26, 2023, someone called in a tip that Benjamin was at a house on the 1300 block of Sunny Valley Loop Road in Wolf Creek, about 16 miles north of Grants Pass. The house belonged to a 68-year-old woman named Tina Marie Jones. The police took up positions around Tina's house while they waited for a search warrant. They were trying to stay out of sight and observe what was going on. Benjamin walked around Tina's house with one of her dogs. The dog detected the officers and ran toward them until Benjamin called the dog back. Clearly suspicious, Benjamin looked around before climbing onto Tina's roof with a pair of binoculars. Not long after this, Tina and Benjamin both drove away in separate vehicles. Tina was in her 2003 Mitsubishi Eclipse. Benjamin was in his 2008 Nissan Sentra. About an hour later, they returned to Tina's house, but they were both in the Eclipse. The Sentra was gone. At this point, Benjamin started running through the woods. The police chased him using a dog to track his scent. The dog stopped about 760 feet away at the house of Tina's neighbor, 73-year-old Richard Lee Barron. A 64-year-old man named Donald Owen Griffith lived in a trailer on Richard's property. The police spoke to Richard and Donald and did not detect any signs of distress. This was at about 7:15 p.m. Officers assumed that Benjamin was not there. They returned to Tina's house and conducted a search. The police found a bag containing Benjamin's wallet, a lot of cash, and other items that he might use on the run. Multiple electronic devices, including cell phones, were found wrapped in aluminum foil. Tina Marie Jones was taken to a police station. The police found messages sent from her phone saying that she planned to leave town and turn her phone off. Benjamin's phone had a web browser open to a dating website. Maybe he intended on using it to gain assistance or to find additional victims. Tina explained to the police that she knew Benjamin from church. She was upset that she had been placed in this situation and only wanted to help someone in need. The police learned that Benjamin had pushed his Nissan Sentra off a nearby embankment. This is what he and Tina were up to when they drove away from Tina's house. Tina was arrested and would later be convicted of hindering prosecution. She was sentenced to a month in jail and 3 years of probation. As the police were talking to Tina, she asked them if she could call Richard Barron and ask him to take care of her dogs. Richard agreed to do this and told the police that he would call 911 if he saw Benjamin. As was the case when the police spoke to him before, there was no sign of distress from Richard. A week after the attack, on January 31, 2023, at 7:10 a.m., a police officer reviewed messages on a recorded tip line and discovered one from a taxicab driver who believed that Benjamin may have called his taxi company looking for a ride. At 6:48 a.m. that day, a man asked for a ride from Sunny Valley Loop Road to the Three Rivers Medical Center in Grants Pass. The caller ID indicated that the phone belonged to Richard Barron. Again, Richard was Tina's neighbor. The taxicab company did not send a taxi because of the manhunt. The police called Richard Barron, but he didn't answer the phone. An officer stopped by his house at 8:15 a.m., but no one answered the door. 2 hours later, the police entered the house and found Richard and Donald dead in the living room. The cause of death for both men was blunt force trauma. They had been killed sometime after 3:30 p.m. the day before. The men were covered in wood pellets. There was a strong odor of gasoline in the house, and the stove was burning. The police came to believe that Richard and Donald gave assistance to Benjamin, either voluntarily or involuntarily. They noticed that Richard's small white dog, named Rascal, was missing. They wondered if maybe Benjamin had taken the dog. The police soon learned that Benjamin had managed to get a taxi from Richard's house to an intersection 3 blocks away from Justine's house. A resident in the neighborhood provided the police surveillance video, which captured Benjamin walking Richard's dog, Rascal, so officers knew they were close. Justine's house was searched, but Benjamin was not there. Later, a police dog alerted to the crawl space under the house. A robot fitted with a camera was sent into the crawl space and spotted Benjamin hiding there. Moments later, the police heard a gunshot. 36-year-old Benjamin Foster had used a .45 caliber pistol on himself. He was taken to a hospital, but died a few hours later. Richard Barron's dog Rascal was found nearby and was uninjured. Now moving to my analysis. There are a lot of mysteries remaining in the case of Benjamin Foster. One theory about what happened is that mental health symptoms motivated his behavior. There are a few clues that point in this direction. For instance, his family members referred to a sudden change in his behavior. One of his victims said that he accused her of planting cameras inside his residence, even putting a camera in his microwave. Benjamin was described as paranoid, someone who had lost his mind, mentally ill, and not being good with people. I find it curious that somebody described in this way would work as a bartender. Benjamin appeared to have a fascination with weapons. He went to gun shows frequently and had been arrested for carrying a concealed gun without a permit. He also studied martial arts. Benjamin was thinking about combat and self-defense a lot. During the early stages of romantic relationships, Benjamin was charismatic and extremely nice. He appeared to be considerate, thoughtful, and romantic. Usually, violent offenders have a limited number of motives for their behavior, like jealousy or substance use. Benjamin had a lot of different motives. He was willing to be violent over just about anything. Jealousy was a motive. Substance use may have been a motive, but he was also motivated by paranoia, revenge, and he murdered 2 men to evade law enforcement. Benjamin did not appear to have any sexual motive for his violence, even though he held 2 of his victims for multiple days. Even though he was extremely violent toward human beings, Benjamin had a soft spot for dogs. He would often be accompanied by dogs. Tending to a dog allowed one of his victims to escape, and Benjamin even took the dog of a murder victim with him on the run. There is really no way to know what was going on with Benjamin. Based on his paranoia, it is reasonable to believe that he had some type of mental illness, but no single mental disorder would explain the various motives for his violence. Maybe with Benjamin, paranoia was really the driver for everything, like the jealousy, the revenge, and the escaping from law enforcement were all really about fear. All the attacks came from the same feeling, but expressed in ways that made them seem attributable to various motives. If that was the case, schizophrenia or paranoid personality disorder could be possibilities as far as mental disorders, but again, there's no way to know. As far as what happened with Richard and Donald, they seem to be the forgotten victims in this case. There's a lot of emphasis on Benjamin's girlfriends, but not much talk about the murder victims. I think this is because not a lot is known about the 2 men that Benjamin killed, and it's possible the men rendered some assistance to him. Some rural areas in Oregon are known for having anti-government sentiment. Wolf Creek is in Josephine County. This county is not known for having a large number of law enforcement fan clubs. Paranoia is not unusual there. Perhaps Richard and Donald felt like Benjamin fit right in. He was on the run from the law. Clearly, he did not like law enforcement. But as it turns out, Benjamin really wasn't a team player. Those are my thoughts in the case of Benjamin Foster. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Over the years, I've covered a lot of cases that deal with domestic violence in some way. And I've noticed this pattern in situations where the man is the offender and the woman is the victim, where the man is violent, the relationship ends, but then the man apologizes and the relationship resumes. Invariably, after this happens, the man is violent again. So when looking at the stories, it seems very obvious, like it can be viewed a mile away that this is going to happen. But for somebody in the romantic relationship, emotions cloud judgment, and the reunion seems like a good idea. Reconciliation seems to make sense. So the positives of the offender somehow outweigh the negatives, even when the negatives involve potentially lethal force. Doesn't seem like a lot of logic is being applied there, because it's not. Again, these are often emotionally based decisions. Sometimes they could also be financial decisions, I guess, but most of them are based on this idea that love can conquer all, that true love would not involve violence, and remorse on the part of the violent offender means that he'll never do it again. I think there's a problem putting too much stock in the idea of remorse as a protective factor. I think that being remorseful for violence is a good sign, but if the origin of the violence is paranoia, remorse does not necessarily signal safety. Paranoia is a very powerful feeling. It can transcend common sense. It can transcend good judgment. It's one of those emotions that I think just bypasses the safety system sometimes. Certain people, they cannot resist the impulses caused by paranoia. If one thinks about it, paranoia is really powerful because it's like out-of-control self-preservation. A person believes that everyone, or at least many people in the world, are trying to get them. They are being watched. They're being persecuted. They're being followed. These are very scary feelings. Paranoia is not about chasing something like money or drugs or sex or something like that. Paranoia is about self-defense. So again, it's too powerful for some people to resist. The way I like to think of it is telling somebody to turn off paranoia is a lot like telling them to turn off a reflex. So imagine if somebody is walking down like this large staircase in a house or in a commercial building, and they miss a step. So their heel kind of slips off a step as they're going down, and if they don't catch themselves, they could be making a trip all the way down the stairs. It would be very unpleasant, maybe even lethal. So reflexively, they reach out and grab the railing, right? So this prevents them from falling. This is a maneuver designed to be safe, to avoid problems. Well, asking somebody to give up paranoia when they're in a paranoid state, like asking somebody not to be afraid of the government or whoever they're worried about, is like telling somebody not to reach out and grab the railing. Again, to them, it's self-defense. It's self-preservation. It is hardwired, and they're not going to give it up. So how ineffective must remorse be in this situation? If somebody believes that all these people are trying to get them, then remorse that they had for violence that occurred a few months ago or a few years ago doesn't really matter. That remorse might have been genuine, but in the moment, they're fearful. In the moment, they're frightened. They're thinking about, how do I protect myself? If that means engaging in violence against others, they're going to do it, even if they had remorse in the past. So again, remorse is good, but when remorse occurs along with paranoia, the paranoia is almost always going to win.